Welcome into the roundtable. I am Brad Wakai. That's Tyson Gentry. We are continuing along in our divisional breakdowns here. 3 more to go, Tyson, and then we are ready to go for the opening regular season game on Thursday night as the Bills go in to face the Rams. I can't wait.
And I was a couple weeks ago on here saying that getting the defending champs at home as dogs to open the season was a bet you had to go make. And now we're like 10 days away from this thing, and I don't know if Matt Stafford's elbow is good. So maybe I'm backtracking on that a little bit.
It's certainly weird. There hasn't been much about Matthew Stafford and the Rams, and the line ballooned up to 2.5 road favorite Bills there, which is pretty interesting. But we'll have a bunch of different breakdowns as we get ready for our betting show. But right now we are breaking down the NFC North. Interesting division, I think. You know, you got the Lions who are on Hard Knocks, we'll discuss. The Packers seemingly got worse. The Vikings bring in a new head coach, so they're a potential upgrade there. And you have the Bears who are in a complete rebuild with a new coach, new general manager there. It looks like they want to overhaul everything. Again, right. So interesting division in terms of that, like the strategy of the different teams, who wants to compete for this crown, or who's going to wait out the Aaron Rodgers era. I'm kind of intrigued to keep an eye on this thing from afar, though. I don't think it's one that's going to glue me to the table or glue me to the TV to follow him, but I'm definitely going to keep an eye on what's going on there, Tyson. How about you?
Well, I'm looking forward to the Thanksgiving matchup that we get. Right, it's all like the NFC North. You try to avoid it, they shove it down your throat. You're going to watch NFC North football. That's just how it goes. But like the whole division, everybody's in different spots, which is interesting. Like the Lions seem to be, they feel at least like they're ascending, trying to break through to that middle tier of teams. The Bears certainly feel like they're comfortable staying at the bottom for a minute. The Vikings, we don't know what to make of them. I know you got some fire coming later. And then the Packers, a lot of people are kind of saying, well, what the hell's going on over there in Green Bay? And I think we're going to get into that too.
Absolutely. We're going to start with the Lions, though. Let's get into it. They're on Hard Knocks. It's been awesome. Dan Campbell's been great, you know, coming into his second season off of a 3-13-1 year last year. A lot of luck didn't go their way. 2-6 in one-score games, 1-4 in field goal games, all ranking towards the bottom of the league there. Jared Goff, second year there, seeming to have better weapons. They bring in DJ Chark. Amon-Ra St. Brown looks like a bona fide number one. And Josh Reynolds, I think, his buddy from the Rams, will help out that offense. And you add in a healthy TJ Hawkinson and DeAndre Swift at running back. It looks to be a good offense, at least roster on paper, right? At least above average or right at average, which is something you couldn't say about the Lions for a while. What's your overall sense regarding the Detroit Lions heading into this year, maybe watching Hard Knocks and just overall in general?
First of all, I love Dan Campbell. We're a big Dan Campbell podcast. This might be the Dan Campbell podcast. But one name you didn't mention there when talking about all the additions is first-round wide receiver Jameson Williams from Alabama. Obviously, with the torn ACL, probably won't see him until super late in the year, and who knows? Maybe the Lions are really bad and we don't see him at all. But that's a guy that's going to take the top off of defenses at the NFL level. I think he's going to be very important for him. But my overall thoughts on the Lions, man, is like, we know what we're getting, at least in the style of play that this team is going to have. They're going to punch you in the mouth. And that's refreshing because for a lot of these Lions teams, they've done exclusively anything but punch somebody in the mouth for about a decade. And we were on here a year ago when Dan Campbell was getting clowned on from everybody. Like, this is awesome. This is what the Lions need. And now it's like, cool, right? It's like, look at this guy. This guy, like, he doesn't care if you have 3 toes. He'll beat you up. We knew.
Yeah, we came out here and said it. And like you mentioned, man, Jameson Williams, he was my number 1 rated receiver coming out of the draft this year. Aiden Hutchinson looks like he's going to be a bona fide star in this league too. Their number 1 pick out of Michigan, their defensive end. I think he's going to be awesome. So it's overall, I think it's trending in the right direction as we get in the best case and our worst case scenarios and give our realistic expectations. I think clearly best case scenario for the Detroit Lions this year would be to win 7 or 8 games. I don't think they're quite at the threshold where they can compete for this division, where you can realistically say, hey, they're going to win double-digit wins this year. They just don't have enough talent on the roster. I think a lot of that has to do with Jared Goff limitations, but I know people like to shit on him. I mean, he shows flashes at times of why he was the number 1 overall pick. I'm still a lot higher on Jared Goff than other people in the media or other football fans in general. I think he's a solid quarterback for this team. Now, if you want to win a Super Bowl, you're going to have to upgrade eventually. But let's not forget he did go to the Super Bowl. Overall, though, I think when you look at the Lions, a successful best case scenario for me would be 7 or 8 wins here. Everything trends in the right direction. The curse that was like all over Detroit last year, losing these crazy ones. Justin Tucker breaking an NFL record field goal distance to beat them. That maybe goes in the right direction this year, and they can get on the right side of these games.
Absolutely. And I think beyond what you said, because I think I agree with that. Like if they win 7-8 games, this was a smash success for Detroit. But if they can push good teams in the same way that they did last year, but just finish a couple of them is all we're asking, because then all of a sudden the momentum's building. On an individual player basis, I guess if Amon-Ra St. Brown is as good as he looked last year, there was no other options on the field really to throw the ball to. He was getting force-fed, but it paid off, right? I mean, that's the narrative, is he's not that good. They were just throwing the ball. He caught it, got a bunch of yards and touchdowns. Like, it still counts. So if he keeps ascending, if DeAndre Swift turns into that Alvin Kamara, maybe Alvin Kamara light because he's not as good of a runner in between the tackles, but the skill position guys taking the next step. The defensive line is anchored by Aiden Hutchinson. Jeff Okudah keeps getting better. Secondary's improved. This could be a 7-win football team.
Other thing to add to that real quick, they have the 5th easiest schedule this year based on win total projections. That should help them out a ton. And they're also the 3rd most injured team last year. You expect that to regress, and you're going to get a healthier overall roster, which should help the depth out. So that's something to keep an eye on there too. Worst case scenario, I think, as we move into this for me, the roster continues to just not come together. They're not able to put together good game plans. They continue to be the Detroit Lions, where they shoot themselves in the foot, make mistakes, don't make timely plays, fumble the ball when they shouldn't, don't pick off passes when they should. And it just sort of feels like it's the same old Detroit Lions, and they're sitting at the same record, even though there was all this hype going into the season. I think that would be the worst case for me, is you expect at least a step in improvement. Nobody's coming out and saying realistically the Detroit Lions should win this division. And if they don't, man, it's a disappointment. But you're expecting growth. You're expecting them to take a next step on this progression as they try to continue to build this franchise back up. And if they can't do that after all these expectations, I think that is demoralizing for this franchise.
Yeah, and if that is going on, then there's a good chance they're losing more of these close games, which means there's a good chance there's some turmoil going on inside the team, some infighting, because obviously 2 years of that in a row isn't going to fly at a professional level. A lot of these guys would be upset. And then we're hearing about drama in Detroit, right? That to me is absolute worst case. But you said it. Maybe they're not better. And when we say best case, like realistically 3rd in the division is what we'll get into here next. So it's not like we're talking about these guys lighting the world on fire, but the floor is the same as it's been for Detroit for 15 years.
Which is really bad.
Yeah. The worst.
And realistically, I don't expect that. I think when I'm looking up and down the roster, the people they've added, I think the attitude there has changed. I mean, DeAndre Swift, Jamal Williams at running back. That's a good 1-2 punch. Jared Goff, you can do a lot worse in this league than having him as your starting quarterback. Good skill position players. I think they have an attitude on defense that you want. Then they bring in Chris Board, Gerard Davis at linebacker. Aiden Hutchinson should help them in the pass rush. Mike Hughes at cornerback. That's a big addition, I think, as well. And Deshaun Elliott. They're getting the right people in there. Vets mixed with good talent, speed to try to become more explosive. So realistically for me, I do think they finish 6 to 8 wins. I'm not sure if I'm ready to give them the high end of that mark, but I don't want to necessarily give them the low end of the mark because I like what they're doing right now, and I actually think there will be improvement for the Lions.
I feel like 8 to me is a little bit too high for a realistic number, but I do like 6. Somewhere around there where realistically we see what everything around this team is, and we can get a view of what Jameson Williams could bring to this offense, right? I mean, we're not on here saying like this is a playoff team and then this guy's going to join. We're hoping by the end of the year to see whether Detroit needs to take another quarterback in the draft or not. Like realistically, I think that's where we're at. But I think they're going to be too good to get a look at C.J. Stroud, at Bryce Young. And so realistically for me, I think it's a really fun year to be a Detroit Lions fan because they're going to be in fights.
And that's all you can ask, really, from the Lions. I mean, you want to have some purpose. You want to have some care.
And they won't be
Now,
0-15 or whatever, 0-12 or whatever it was before they get the first win. I'm comfortable.
there you go. I like that. Let's move into a team we both think is going to be really bad, and that's the Chicago Bears. Now, overview, Nagy didn't work out, so they move on from Matt Nagy. Ryan Pace, the general manager, gone. So they bring in Matt Eberflus, who was a defensive coordinator last year for the Colts. Justin Fields, second-year quarterback. They're going to need to see a lot more improvement out of him. They're going to need to see a lot more help given to him, and I don't think they did that with the additions of this offensive roster. I think it's one of the worst offensive lines, if not the worst in the league, and the skill position players are way below average. With that being said, Tyson, anything else you want to add as we kind of give an overview of the Bears before we move into anything else?
Well, you said additions to the offense, and I'm just struggling to come up with whatever the hell the Bears did this offseason. Look, they're trying.
Byron Pringle.
Exactly. Yeah, Velus Jones and Byron Pringle. This is your new toys you get to play with. And by the way, we're going to make the offensive line worse. So go have fun, run for your life over and over and over again. It's one of those things, man, where we're watching in real time. Unless Justin Fields is really, really special, this Bears team is going to ruin him. He's already on guys that didn't want him or didn't pick him, right? So it's like, you have Darnell Mooney, who I think is a good wide receiver, and you have an okay tight end, Cole Kmet. Sling it.
Best case scenario for me, and it's not a very bright one. I mean, best case scenario for me is they win 4 games. I just think this is a horrible roster. Their receivers suck. Their line's horrible. I think their defense is bad, and Roquan Smith, their best player, doesn't want to be there. I mean, they lost Akeem Hicks, Eddie Goldman in the interior, Allen Robinson gone, Khalil Mack gone, Danny Trevathan gone. They lost all their vets. And I understand it. They want to overhaul this roster. Like, that's what Ryan Poles is trying to do here, the new general manager who's overseeing things. They want to overhaul this thing and bring in their guys. It's me understanding that approach means I think they're going to try to bottom out as much as possible. So best case scenario, maybe Justin Fields is special. And if he looks that part, that is truly the best case. But I don't see any form of success coming for this team this year.
I don't either. And there's not any real avenues that I can like go down like a rabbit hole in my head on how they can be successful, because every little branch has a dead end at the end of it. No matter where you look on this team, they're just depleted of talent everywhere. I don't know if it's 4 wins. Obviously, best case is Justin Fields looks special, but they're not going to let him look special. I don't know why that's been so difficult, I think, for people to understand going into this. It's like, well, he was bad last year. He's a rookie. He got to play a handful of games for a horrible head coach with a horrible roster. And then they're going to do it this year again. And then it's going to be, well, Justin Fields didn't work out.
Right.
It's disgusting, dude. Like, it's like, why'd you pick this guy in the top 10 or 11, I think?
I think the worst case kind of going along with that is if Justin Fields gets hurt and they can't do a real evaluation on him. Because if he gets hurt, they're going to be worse than they were last year, for sure. But they're going to have an opportunity to pick one of these quarterbacks we keep talking about coming out in this draft class. Now, if Justin Fields is hurt and you can't get an evaluation on him, I don't think they're going to move on from him after 2 years, even though this regime didn't pick him. I think they may bring him back. And then what happens if Justin Fields stinks still? What happens if you load this roster up around him, then you're closer and closer to having to pick up his option, and he stinks, and you miss out on a quarterback class. So for all intents and purposes, it's going to be really good. I think that's the worst case there. I don't know if I can see anything beyond that being like the truly worst case for this franchise this year.
And that sounded pretty on brand, what you just said. That sounded like the Chicago Bears to me. That sounds exactly like what we're about to watch. It's like, this is what happens. And so maybe he doesn't get hurt, but maybe it still is tough to evaluate him this year. They're going to talk themselves one way or the other, and it's going to be wrong. And that is also going to go into my realistic expectations here, I think. The Bears are going to be really bad. Like, really, really bad. Like, worst team in the NFL bad. And I think that when you look at the roster, it's just hard to even come up with a bright spot, right? Running back is good. What are the game scripts going to be like when you're down 21-3 at halftime? Justin Fields has to throw the ball. Darnell Mooney is a good wide receiver. Darnell Mooney is like 170 pounds. Darnell Mooney is not an X receiver number 1 wide option on an NFL roster. He's just not. at least yet. Maybe he will be one day, but this team's going to be anemic on offense.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't really have anything else to add to that realistically. I mean, besides I think this team will be the worst team in the NFL. We'll get to this in our gambling show, but I'm going to hold a ticket. I'll give you a little teaser here to have the worst record in the NFL, and you get that at a big plus money price because I don't think the market's understanding how bad I think this organization wants this team to be. Like I think they want this team to bottom out, and they get high draft pick after high draft pick after high draft pick. Next season, they really load up again. I think the market's missing the point on that, or missing like the idea behind that here.
3 years from now, we can sit here and have the exact same conversation about a new name quarterback and a new name head coach and a new name general manager, because that's where the Bears are. That's what they've shown over the last since they went to the playoffs in 2018 when they had the double doink. So from 2019 on, it's been this over and over and over again, and they're not good. Like they're not good at drafting as an organization. They ignore needs as an organization. They don't treat their players well. It's not a very good recipe, man.
And we'll see what happens with Ryan Poles, the new GM. I mean, he's an ex-player. You know, he played in this league, so
you have $93 million in cap space next season. You have a home run on the table, re-signing Roquan Smith, because in 5 years, that deal that you give Roquan, or 3 years, it's going to look fine because that's how this thing goes. And you choose not to take the PR move. Bold strategy. Lock up your best player on your team for 5 years as your first I'm here to show, hey, we're not doing this to guys anymore. What happened to Khalil Mack? That won't happen again. Right away. 6 months in.
Well, like you said, though, he didn't draft him. And it's a linebacker. It's a position I don't think is very valuable.
$93 million in cap space.
Well, next season, we'll see. I mean, we'll see who they go get. Maybe they'll go get receivers and different players in the league. But, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and defend the Bears. I mean, they haven't been very defendable. I'm just saying, I don't think Ryan Poles is Ryan Pace. You know what I mean? I think he has an opportunity. And, I mean, Pace is bad. We'll see what Poles does. To your point, I don't think it was a very good first impression.
Wasn't a good draft either.
So we'll have to see where the Bears are at, but we know for a fact this year they're not going to be very good. Let's get into this team here, Tyson, the Minnesota Vikings, and another different change coming for them. Kevin O'Connell steps in as head coach after they fired Mike Zimmer. He's coming over from the Rams, offensive coordinator there. Kirk Cousins in his 5th season here, which is crazy to think about. Lost a lot on defense, I think, or I guess big names across the board. Sheldon Richardson, Nick Vigil, Anthony Barr on defense, Michael Pierce as well at D tackle spot. Also losing Tyler Conklin at tight end. But you bring in Zadarius Smith off the edge, who I think is going to be awesome for him, depleting the Packers a little bit. Harrison Phillips, Jordan Hicks as well. And then trying to improve the O-line a bit, Jesse Davis and Chris Reed. I'm very high on the Vikings this year, and that has a lot to do with Kevin O'Connell coming in and replacing Mike Zimmer, who is a fossil. Kevin O'Connell, I think, is going to make this offense so much better and so much more efficient. And then the defense, maybe some new age ideas how they can run this thing compared to Mike Zimmer being stuck in his ways.
Well, and you mentioned Kevin O'Connell, and I think something that's really important. The Rams throw the ball to receivers a lot. And when Kevin O'Connell was the offensive coordinator, I think it was 73% of Matthew Stafford's completions were to wide receivers. Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen, it's a pretty damn good pairing to get this started off with if you're Kevin O'Connell. And I think one thing that maybe the broader football community isn't quite anticipating this year, but Justin Jefferson's going to be hunting records.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to be hunting records. What Cooper Kupp did last year, I expect if Justin Jefferson plays 17, I don't see any reason why he can't put up similar stats.
Now, best case for me, and now you think I'm crazy on this, but I think best case scenario, honestly, the Vikings can go to the NFC Championship game. Yeah. Their offensive roster is incredible. I mean, if Dalvin Cook can stay healthy, if Kirk Cousins can actually work in an offense that's there to utilize his strengths, not have him hand the ball off and then do play action because that's what his head coach wants. I think their sky's the limit, I think, for this team. Quite honestly, I think offensively they're going to be super talented. I think defensively they have enough pieces there still to be good. I mean, last year, 51 sacks. They had a plus 21 sack margin, which is nuts. And 6-8 in one-score games. 6-8. That's coaching, flat out. 2-4 in field goal games. This team played in more close games than anybody when they could have stomped on the opponent's throat and knocked them out. Like, it's crazy. But the 12th most injured team in 2021, I think that comes back, especially on defense, to a positive for them. And they face that middle-of-the-road 16th easiest schedule here. So nothing too daunting for this team that I think is ready to explode on both sides of the football.
So you only gave 2 ifs in that best case. You gave if Dalvin Cook is healthy and if Kirk Cousins is Kirk Cousins, basically. I think you're like 8 ifs short on what would have to go right for the Vikings here. Look, for me, best case scenario, I think Minnesota could realistically be improved because, as you said, man, they're playing in field goal games every week. And it was just boneheaded decision after boneheaded decision. After a while, we have a mutual friend who's a Vikings fan. He's texting us like, what the fuck is going on? Like, how is this every week? And so for them to be able to improve in those games, obviously, I think they'll get better. I think the offense will be a lot better. But NFC Championship, man, I mean, I could see this team making a wild card. I don't know if best case scenario, I talk myself into them winning the division.
I think they can win. I think this team can win 13 games. I'm not kidding you.
You think they could win the Super Bowl, sounds like.
I think they're going to be good. I think they're going to be good. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid on the Vikings.
Hey, man, that makes one of us.
Worst case, listen, worst case, I'm an idiot. Kirk Cousins is Kirk Cousins, and this thing just looks the same, right? And because of the limitations of Cousins, they're constantly in close games because they can't separate due to the limitation at quarterback. But I think that's still good enough with an upgrade to get them into the playoffs. So I think worst case scenario, like you said, for me, honestly, is they're in the playoff picture, just barely missing the playoffs, kind of like the Chargers last year, where they're talented, but it doesn't all come together, and they're missing the playoffs there.
I got worst case, everything is dysfunctional. Like, this thing just doesn't fit. Kirk Cousins doesn't mesh with another head coach. We have a little disagreement here on how to run the offense. Kirk Cousins 35 years old now. Like, he's been around the block. He's not going to be shy. We know that about Kirk Cousins. Worst case to me, this team is a 6-win football team.
Wow.
I really think there's a world where the bottom falls out of this thing. The defense doesn't get to the passer like it did a year ago. The defensive scheme kind of lends itself to a lot of dinking and dunking. And there's some pretty good dinkers and dunkers in the NFC North. Actually, Jared Goff beat this team a year ago. And I know it's a new head coach and all these other things, but I think worst case scenario, like they don't stop anybody. They're turning the ball over all the time.
This is the team we've been the furthest apart on in any of these previews.
By a mile.
By a mile. This is great. Wow. Okay. Now, I'll say here, realistically, I expect this team to win the division.
Realistically,
I'm saying they should win this division. And
should or will?
They should. I'm going to say they will win the division. I'll go one step further. Realistically, this team's going to win this division. It's time for somebody to dethrone the Packers, and I think the Vikings are the team to do it this year. Realistically, I expect them to win the division. They're that talented, and I think this offense is going to take off, and your boy Justin Jefferson is going to start breaking some records.
Realistically, he's going to the moon. I know that much. I think Justin Jefferson, for the first 2 years of his career, has been obviously special. We know about the third-year breakout for wide receivers, and he was doing it in an offense that wasn't very kind to him. And now I think he's going to be unleashed. But realistically, I expect this team to be second in the division and fighting for a wild card spot. That's where I think the Vikings are. And so I guess we'll get into the Packers. But winning the division is, you said best case they win 13. Realistically, they win 11?
Yeah, I think so. I think 11 or 12.
I got them at like a 9-win football team.
Whew, man, 3-game difference.
Spicy.
It's very spicy. All right, Green Bay Packers close this thing out. Now, I don't know if we're going to have a true disagreement on the Packers here. I think we're just going to have a different idea on potentially the ceiling here. Obviously, to go through it here, 13-4 last year. Good. Matt LaFleur, man, he just continues to rack up these great seasons as head coach. I can't believe this is his 4th season here. Jeez, man, time is flying. Here's another one for you. Aaron Rodgers, this is going to be his 15th season as the starting quarterback for the Green Bay Packers.
I know.
That's crazy.
It feels like, we remember when he took, but I just found out this morning, I guess, I was 4 when Tom Brady was drafted. So,
man, oh man. Adam Stenavich takes over as offensive coordinator. Joe Barry back for a second season as defensive coordinator. Now, some last year's statistics: 6-3 in one-score games, 5-1 in field goal games, a plus 13 turnover margin. They had 18 picks that they had taken away last year, which is nuts. Only 7 interceptions thrown, and obviously with Rodgers, that's going to be a low number. Also, plus 6 sack margin, 39 sacks, 33 allowed. You expect there's going to be little to no aggression in terms of the one-score games and field goal games, just due to having Aaron Rodgers. They lost Devontae Adams. They lost Zadarius Smith, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and Equanimeous St. Brown at wide receiver positions. So new group there. Tyson, what's your expectations for the Packers coming into this season with pretty much a new look roster here?
You remember what we said when we broke down the Big Ten a week ago? That all these offenses, 2 running backs that you had to worry about, and there was a couple guys that catch up. This is going to be a Big Ten offense. I think, and I'll tell you what, man, I'm excited to watch it because I think Matt LaFleur, for all the Sunday Night Football graphics they put up about him, he still feels underrated to me by the general public. I mean, this is a guy that has a better winning percentage than John Madden, I think,
it's crazy.
Through this many career games. And yeah, he's had 12. He's had Aaron Rodgers the whole time. So we'll see what that offense looks like. But I think this is the kind of football that Matt LaFleur wants to play. That's what it feels like to me. And I think he's got the horses.
Best case for me, NFC Championship game, like they always do. I mean, anytime you have Aaron Rodgers and you have a good coach around them, that should be your expectation going in. That should be the best case. I mean, he's that good, coming off of back-to-back MVPs. My questions regarding that is the lack of receiver talent that they had. Obviously, losing Devontae Adams doesn't help, and I think you're going to be relying on more unproven guys. Although Romeo Doubs looks awesome, their draft pick that they took in the 4th round, he's been great. Actually, better than Christian Watson, who they took in the 2nd round so far. But I don't know. I mean, you're going to have a running game with Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon, which I think is going to help out Aaron Rodgers a lot. And anytime you have an elite quarterback, he's going to elevate no matter who's around him. So best case scenario still for them is to make it to the NFC Championship game.
And I agree with that. That's where I have the ceiling as well. It kind of feels like that's been the ceiling no matter who's around Aaron Rodgers for the better part of a decade. But I think they like what they have in Allen Lazard, and I'm curious to see what they actually do. I mean, the guy's kind of been an afterthought in Green Bay, but he's 6'4", 230, and he's kind of a freak. And so there's a chance, right? But pretty slim, and a 0% chance that he'll ever be Devontae Adams. I think that's going to be pretty big. I think Aaron Jones absorbs a lot of that target share, but I think best case scenario is AJ Dillon has 1,400 yards on the ground. Aaron Jones has 65, 70 catches out of the backfield, and they're able to replicate a lot of that production, and they're able to grind out games like Pittsburgh Steeler, OG Ben Roethlisberger days, 12-minute drives, stuff like that. And I think if they can do that to a lot of teams, this is somebody you're not going to want to play in the playoffs.
I think worst case scenario for me, they finish 2nd in the division, that's what I'm expecting. And I still think they make the playoffs.
So best and worst case are the same. Are they playing the Vikings in the NFC Championship game?
That would actually be a sick game. I feel so vindicated. No, I still think this team's going to make the playoffs. I think they're going to win enough games where they're still going to position themselves in a weaker NFC where you can not win a division to have an opportunity to do it. We see it all the time. I think the Seahawks, getting worse. The question marks around the Arizona Cardinals. There's opportunities for them not to win a division and still come in here. So worst case scenario, I think, is them not winning the division for this team. Their floor is too high for them not to have some level of success here. And I think any measure of success for the Packers and Rodgers is playoffs.
Yeah, I think worst case scenario, they're fighting for a wild card spot. So we're similar here. I have Vikings best case as Packers worst, but like losing Devontae Adams is a big deal, like a really big deal. I don't care if you're Aaron Rodgers or Jay Cutler from back in the day, like whoever it was. He's the best receiver in the NFL, and he's not on your team anymore. And he was the guy. Robert Tonyan coming back from an ACL. If he can't go and he's not ready, then it's like Josiah DeGuara, I think, is their backup tight end there. maybe, Aaron Rodgers being conservative all these years and not throwing a lot of these interceptions will come back to bite them, because maybe he just doesn't take the risks that are necessary to put this team in a position to reach that ceiling.
Hey, realistically for me, I think this is still a good football team. I don't think it's going to be great like they've been the past few, where they're 13-4 and they're number one seed, 13-4 and they're cruising to the NFC Championship, or they're cruising into the next step of the playoffs. I don't see that with this Packers team this year. I think they're a good football team, not a great one. So Aaron Rodgers is still going to do Aaron Rodgers things, where he's going to be fantastic. I actually think this defense is going to be awesome. I mean, that's one thing that I don't think I mentioned. This is going to be a really good defense this year, and that might help them out, to your point, kind of replicate what the Steelers did back in the day. Being able to control the opponent, being able to utilize your own ground game, and then having an awesome quarterback who can find some talented people or some less talented people on the outside than you've had in the past, but still be able to patch it together and make it work. So I still think this is going to be a really good football team and a team to compete with in the NFC. I just don't expect them to have that top level talent like they've had in the past.
This feels like a better version of the Cleveland Browns from a year ago. Does that make sense? Like, if you put Aaron Rodgers on that Browns team,
oh my God, they'd mop the league.
I don't know if they even win the Super Bowl though.
Is the Browns thing, like, with Rodgers?
With these wideouts, like, let's get this all clear, right? Like, I think the defense is going to be good, and the running game is going to be good, but like, it's just something feels off. Just like with that Browns team, something feels like it's missing. Right. And I guess that's kind of where I was at with that comparison. But I think the style of play will be pretty similar as well, to be honest with you. But it just kind of feels like there's an X factor missing. And maybe it's not Devontae Adams, but it just feels like there's something that this team doesn't have, that even a team like the 49ers feels like they have.
That's a great – yeah, it just does feel like there's just something missing from the Packers. And I can't put my finger on it. The easy one is to say Devontae Adams. But maybe it's like Zadarius Smith. Maybe that's the defense is something. I don't know. But I agree with you, man. This feels like something's missing from this Packers team, and they feel more gettable than they've been in the past in this division. I think
they feel
maybe
softer.
That's why.
Like, they're gonna be a physical football team, but it doesn't. The fear is not there anymore. Like, it's gonna be there when Aaron Rodgers drives with 2 minutes left on you and beats you, because that's what he does. But going into the game, I feel like, at least going into this season from an outsider's perspective, it just kind of feels like they don't have the juice, that like the next gear that, let's say, Tampa Bay or the Rams have in order to get up and put 40 points on somebody.
All right. Well, that is our NFC North preview. Man, that was the Vikings, the biggest disagreement so far in all of our previews. I love that.
Yeah, I'm going to mail you a breathalyzer and have you take it before every show.
Yeah, you said I was high on the Vikings, and you said you're high on something before we got on here. So
I like them. Man, maybe they're going to be really fun to watch. Dalvin Cook special, Justin Jefferson special, and we'll see what Kevin O'Connell does whipping that thing up. Because we talk about Adam Thielen like he's 50, he's 31, right? Like he's still a really good football player. So they have the pieces. It just, the Vikings feel like when we do NBA breakdowns, like they're your Orlando Magic this year. Yeah. Where you were all so excited before the season started. And I think we might be having a similar conversation at the end of the year.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for NFC North Preview. As always, like, subscribe, and share. Follow us on Instagram @_the Roundtable Pod. TikTok is the same. And Twitter is @TRT_pod. 2 more breakdowns to go. Then we are getting ready for our gambling podcast, as we're going to do Super Bowl predictions, conference predictions, win totals, you name it. So that's why you got to that's why you got to subscribe to our YouTube channel, on our Apple Podcast page, as well as Spotify, so you don't miss any of these uploads. And we appreciate you sharing us out as well. Till next time, everybody. Peace.